Welcome, students, to the Time Map. Now, when most of us think about the British Empire, we tend to imagine it as something that happened far, far away, across vast oceans. But Britain's very first colony was right on its doorstep, just across the Irish Sea. And the story of that colony essentially shaped all the others that followed. Today, we're going to dive deep into the complex history of Ireland and the British Empire, exploring the realities of conquest, the devastation of famine, and the long, difficult path to independence. Our lesson today is broken down into three simple parts. First up, we'll walk through the historical narrative. Then we'll look at two surprising facts. And finally, we'll wrap things up with a history knowledge check to see what you've learned. Let's get started. Stand on the west coast of Wales on a clear day. Look out across the sea. You can actually see the hills of Ireland, literally just 20 miles of water between them. And yet, for over 700 years, Ireland was something Britain held by force. It was the first English colony, Britain's longest-running colonial relationship, and, crucially, the model for everything that came later. But it's rarely taught that way in British schools. So today, we're going to tell the story that often gets forgotten. So, how did this all begin? Well, we have to go all the way back to 1169. Norman knights from England landed in Ireland, initially invited by a deposed Irish king who was looking for some military muscle. King Henry II of England followed right behind them in 1171. And from that exact moment, the kings of England claimed absolute authority over Ireland. Now, for the next 400 years, actual English control was pretty limited. It was mostly confined to a small area around Dublin known as the Pale. Outside of that, Ireland remained an independent culture, with its own kings, its own legal system, and its own Gaelic language. But the Tudors changed all of that. Henry VIII officially declared himself King of Ireland in 1542. Later, his daughter Elizabeth I ruthlessly crushed Gaelic resistance, and by 1603, the full conquest of Ireland was complete. Moving into the early 1600s, we see a massive shift in tactics. English and Scottish Protestants were systematically settled or planted on land that was forcibly taken from Catholic Irish landowners. The largest of these plantations was in Ulster, up in the north. Now, this is absolutely crucial to understand. This was colonialism in the modern sense. It was the deliberate moving in of one population to replace another. The deep religious divide that still echoes in Ireland and Northern Ireland today, it started right here. You had Catholic peasants working the land and Protestant landlords owning it. Two distinct communities sharing the exact same island, but living in completely different worlds. This strategy eventually evolved into another major political shift. In 1801, following a failed Irish rebellion in 1798, Britain abolished the Irish Parliament altogether. Ireland was completely merged with Great Britain to form the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. Sure, Irish MPs would now sit at Westminster, but they were permanently outnumbered. Every major decision affecting Ireland was now being made in London. This system, governing a colony directly from the imperial capital, is exactly what would later be called direct rule in places like Africa or India. Ireland was the proving ground for it. And then came an absolute catastrophe. In 1845, a fungal disease arrived in Ireland from North America. It completely rotted the potato crop. To put this in perspective, 3 million of Ireland's 8 million people depended on the potato for almost everything they ate. The harvest failed that year, then it failed again and again. This nightmare went on for 7 years. People starved in the streets, emigrated, or died of rampant disease in workhouses. But here's a hard historical truth that's often left out. Throughout the entire famine, Ireland continued to export huge quantities of food, wheat, beef, dairy, directly to England. The British government, strictly committed to free market economics, refused to halt these exports or provide proper relief funding. In fact, Sir Charles Trevelyan, the official in charge of relief, infamously called the famine the judgment of God on a backward people. The human cost was staggering. 1 million Irish people died, another million emigrated. Ireland's population dropped by a quarter and literally would not recover for 150 years. As you might expect, after the famine, Irish politics were changed forever. The deep-seated anger toward British rule galvanized into a mass political movement. Starting in the 1870s, Irish leaders campaigned peacefully for what was called Home Rule. This meant setting up an Irish parliament back in Dublin, though remaining inside the British Empire. Under the leadership of Charles Stewart Parnell, they came incredibly close to winning it. 3 separate Home Rule bills were introduced in Westminster. The first 2 were entirely blocked by the House of Lords. The third one finally passed in 1914, but there was a catch. It was immediately suspended because the First World War had just broken out. An entire generation of peaceful Irish nationalists felt utterly betrayed. This sense of betrayal leads directly to a pivotal moment on Easter Monday. the 24th of April 1916. While the British Army was busy fighting Germany over in France, about 1,200 armed Irish Republicans seized key buildings across Dublin. Standing right on the steps of the General Post Office, Patrick Pearse read a powerful proclamation. Irishmen and Irish women, in the name of God and of the dead generations from which she receives her old tradition of nationhood, Ireland, through us, summons her children to her flag and strikes for her freedom. The British response was swift and overwhelming. Troops were sent in, Dublin was heavily shelled, and the rising was completely crushed within 6 days. Interestingly, at first, ordinary Dubliners actually booed the fighters for destroying their city. But then, the British government made a fatal miscalculation. Over the next 10 days, 15 of the uprising's leaders were executed by firing squad. James Connolly, who was already severely wounded, had to be tied to a chair just so they could shoot him. That brutality flipped public opinion in Ireland almost overnight. The dead men instantly became martyrs. By 1919, the tension boiled over, and Ireland was at war with Britain once again. The newly formed Irish Republican Army, or the IRA, waged a fierce guerrilla campaign led by figures like Michael Collins. In response, the British government deployed special forces, infamously known as the Black and Tans, who became notorious for their brutal reprisals against ordinary civilians. After 2 long years of bitter, bloody fighting, both sides finally agreed to talk. The result was the Anglo-Irish Treaty of December 1921. This treaty created the Irish Free State, giving it independent dominion status, much like Canada. But, critically, it also partitioned the island. The 6 counties up in the north, which had a Protestant majority, remained inside the United Kingdom as Northern Ireland. Tragically, the treaty immediately sparked a bitter civil war in Ireland. It pitted those who accepted the compromise against those who demanded full, total independence and a united Ireland. Eventually, the Free State would officially become the Republic of Ireland in 1949. But Northern Ireland remained part of the UK. And from the 1960s right through to the 1990s, the region was torn apart by decades of violent sectarian conflict known as the Troubles, which claimed over 3,500 lives. When you look at the entirety of Ireland's experience, the initial conquest, the plantations, the devastating famine, the armed resistance, and the eventual partition, you are essentially looking at the template for exactly what Britain would go on to do all across its global empire. And now, let's take a clear break from the narrative to look at 2 surprising facts about this story. Fact number 1. There are more Irish people living abroad today than in Ireland itself. The Great Famine triggered the absolute largest emigration event in 19th century Europe. Just between 1845 and 1855, around 1.5 million Irish people fled to the United States, Canada, Australia, and Britain. And that exodus didn't stop. It continued for generations. Today, there are over 80 million people around the world who claim Irish heritage. To put that into perspective, that is more than 13 times the current population of the Republic of Ireland. We're talking about roughly 33 million Americans, 14 million British people, and 5 million Canadians with Irish ancestry. The famine didn't just reshape Ireland, it quite literally reshaped the demographics of the modern world. Fact number 2. The proclamation of the Easter Rising granted equal rights to women long before the rest of the UK did. That 1916 proclamation of the Irish Republic specifically addressed Irish men and Irish women and guaranteed equal rights and equal opportunities to all citizens, totally regardless of gender. For the time, this was completely extraordinary. Remember, in 1916, women in the wider UK couldn't vote at all. Take Constance Markievicz, a senior commander in the Rising. She was sentenced to death for her role, a sentence that was commuted to prison time solely because she was a woman. Just a couple of years later, in 1918, she became the very first woman ever elected to the British Parliament, though as a Sinn Féin MP, she refused to take her seat in London. The Irish Republic was laying the groundwork for women's rights years ahead of Britain. Okay, we've arrived at part 3. It's time for our history knowledge check. I'm going to ask you 5 questions based on what we've just covered. After each question, I'll pause for exactly 4 seconds. I want you to say your answer out loud or jot it down before I reveal the correct response. Ready? Here we go. Question 1. When did the Great Famine in Ireland take place? The answer is 1845 to 1852. It was initially caused by a potato blight, but it was made drastically worse by British government policies. Question 2. Roughly how many people died and how many emigrated during the famine? About 1 million people died, and roughly another 1 million emigrated. This caused Ireland's population to plummet from around 8 million down to about 4 million in the following decades. Question 3. What exactly was the Easter Rising of 1916? It was an armed uprising in Dublin led by Irish Republicans against British rule. The rebellion was crushed in just 6 days, and 15 of its leaders were subsequently executed. Question 4. What did the Anglo-Irish Treaty of 1921 create? It formally created the Irish Free State, which would eventually become the Republic of Ireland, and Northern Ireland, which chose to remain a part of the United Kingdom. Question 5. Why is Ireland so often described as Britain's first colony? Answer: because it was the very first place that England conquered and ruled by force outside of its own borders, beginning way back in 1169. Many of the core techniques later used across the global British Empire, things like land plantation, direct rule, and the continued export of food during a famine, were first tested out in Ireland. When you realize that Ireland served as the blueprint for the entire British Empire, it really makes you ask just how much of our modern world was shaped by those first 20 miles of conquest? Thanks for learning with the Time Map. New videos every 2 days. Subscribe.